By you/spirit of an Angie. While driving my stepdaughter home from school, we came across a young girl climbing out of a car. She was crying and had no pants/underwear on. This was one of the most shocking situations I've ever come across. My stepdaughter and I were chit-chatting on our way home when I pulled into a grocery store shopping center that had some gas pumps. I made an incorrect entrance into the shopping center and had to mistakenly drive around a Chase Bank to get to the gas station. As I round a corner to get to the gas pumps, I see a nice new Mustang stopped in front of me, so I cannot get through. It's only a few seconds before I see a teenage girl get out from the passenger side wearing nothing but a hoodie. She has black pants and panties in her hand and walks swiftly right past my truck. She is clearly distressed, crying, and 100% just as young as my stepdaughter, 15-ish. It took me a second to realize what I just saw. I looked at stepdaughter and said, "Holy shit. That girl didn't even have pants on." I put my truck in reverse and she is getting dressed behind some bushes. I rolled down my window and yelled to her, "Hey. Are you okay? Do you need some help?" She yells back, "Just leave me alone and mind your own business." At this point the Mustang is no longer in sight and I can see my truck says 2-mile range before out of gas. I had music playing and didn't hear the truck being on empty until after I picked my daughter up from school and were talking. So I got to the pump and started pumping gas trying to look for that Mustang. Then I see it circle back towards the girl. I immediately stopped the pump and got back in to drive that direction. I fire up my camera to get his license plate number. I at first couldn't see the girl anymore, but the Mustang is now double parked near the bank. As I pull up behind the car to get a picture of the plates, my stepdaughter says she can. The girl, she's back in the passenger seat. The Mustang has tinted windows, but it's like 3 p.m., the sun is shining, and they weren't super dark, so I could see 2 people in the front seat and notice big hand gestures and movement in the car. They were clearly fighting/arguing. I don't even know if they noticed that I had driven past them to snap a photo at that point. After that I just said, "Fuck it, time to call the police." Stepdaughter said, but she said she didn't need help. "Are you sure?" I was like, "Girl, if you were in this situation and 2 women saw you half naked, crying, walking away from a man/boy in a car while carrying your clothing, I'd hope they would have called it in too. No matter what you said to them." We also live in Oz. My truck said it was 98 degrees. She was a very thin girl, faded out/grown out black hair. She had a hoodie on. Things weren't really adding up. Who wears a hoodie in 100-degree weather? If it was a simple argument between a young high school couple, why not throw your pants on before walking through a parking lot completely commando? Plus, in case you didn't know, Oz is sort of known for sex trafficking and having a large homeless/drug addicted population. There are these blue pills, I think a type of fentanyl that a lot of young kids get started on, called blues, that are usually smoked, and it just destroys a person. Not to mention the methamphetamine all over down here also. By the end of my phone call with police, the dispatcher that I was talking to said that an officer had arrived on scene and found the Mustang. She asked if they could call me later. I of course said yes. I don't know if that is good or bad, but I'll update if/when I get any more information. Lastly, whenever I, 35F, had sex in a car as a teen, it was always nighttime and we would always try and at least park in a secluded area. Especially not in front of a building that probably has many cameras inside and out of it. Anyway, I hope she is okay. I hope it was a misunderstanding and not something more serious, but damn, what a creepy thing to witness on a Thursday afternoon. With your kid nonetheless. Update, so the police gave me a follow-up call today and I kind of felt badly, but I also kind of don't. So the girl is underage, freshman in high school, and the driver of the car, her boyfriend, is a senior in high school, but he unfortunately is 18, right? Because my stepdaughter and I both saw her without any pants/underwear on, it makes things more serious obviously. The teens both said they were just having an argument and that I was not telling the truth about her walking away from the vehicle, crying, carrying her pants, etc. Now, because there were myself and another person in my vehicle, they wanted permission to interview/get a statement from my stepdaughter about what she saw. I am not legally her guardian, so I could not give my permission. I pick my husband up from the airport tomorrow morning, so he has to give permission. He said he will take her in to give a statement on Monday. Stepdaughter is willing to talk to police, so my husband called and set everything up, etc. Because the girl is underage, they had to contact her mother when the police arrived at her boyfriend's car. Her mother and now the boyfriend's parents were the ones initially requesting our official statements regarding what we saw because of the conflicting stories. However, the police said it would be helpful to them as well if stepdaughter can give her statement, as 2 witnesses are better than 1. The officers I talked to today said there are some additional moving parts involving the case that he cannot discuss with me because of the investigation or whatever. So unfortunately I cannot answer everyone's questions, but he did say this might be an ongoing case depending on a few things that they aren't necessarily certain of yet. They both asked me several times if I was sure of what I saw and if I was certain enough to testify in a courtroom setting, as that could very well be where this is headed. I just said yes, I am sure. I initially felt badly because kids in high school have sex all the time. I didn't want this boy getting into trouble / having to potentially register as a sex offender for the rest of his life because I was told to just mind my own business and I didn't. However, the more the officers talked to me, the more I felt like the situation was potentially much heavier than all that. So that's all the update I have for now. It's not much, but I am glad to have called and reported it after all. If I can give another update in the future, I will. Thanks for all the encouragement too. Posted by you/tboogie77. Creepy guy at my door. A few nights ago my daughter, 20, and I, F44, were at home together. It was just us girls because my son, my nephew, who lives with us, and my boyfriend were out. The night was cold and rainy. My daughter was in the kitchen, baking, and I was chatting with her for a bit. I realized that it was getting late, a little after 10 p.m., so I decided to go take a shower. I went into my ensuite and had just turned the water on when I heard my daughter calling me in a hushed but frantic tone. I threw on my robe and came out of my bedroom. She told me that someone was on the deck, knocking on the door. This was very strange for a few reasons, but especially because you have to come all the way into my yard and around the side of the house to get to the deck. I was immediately alarmed. It was late, we weren't expecting anyone, and any normal person would go to the front door. The door to the deck is solid, but there's a window right next to it. I peeked through the window and saw a large man with his hood up, and he was carrying a bag. He had just started knocking again. I said hello? And he responded, yes. Can you open the door please? I asked, who are you looking for? He said, can you please open the door so that we can talk? I repeated more sternly, WHO are you looking for? Do you know someone who lives here? He said, I'm looking for a woman. Are you a mother? Please just open the door. At this point I was ready to call the police, but realized that I had left my phone in the bathroom. My daughter was standing nearby, watching all of this happen with a very worried look on her face. I shouted, you need to leave right now. He didn't reply, but he continued to stand at the door in silence for what felt like a long time. I whispered to my daughter, go grab my phone from the bathroom, and just then he walked towards the stairs to leave. I ran into the living room, which has a window that faces the front of the house, and watched as he walked out of the yard. It dawned on me that the deck is attached to the kitchen and he could have been watching us through the window before he started knocking. We were so shaken. When the guys came home, we told them what happened. They were as concerned as we were. My nephew happens to be a police officer. They immediately went outside to search the yard, but the strange guy was long gone. We're buying external cameras for the house this weekend. My brother's friend had a crazy mother. My parents divorced in 1995. I was 7 and my little brother was 5. After they divorced, we moved into a small apartment in a complex literally across the street from my dad's house. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It helped that the playground and swimming pool was immediately behind our apartment, so we didn't have to go far to enjoy ourselves. I was and still am very much an introvert, so I didn't really have any friends. My brother, on the other hand, was very outgoing, and he made and kept friends very easily. One of these friends was a shy kid whom I'll call Johnny. From the beginning, Johnny kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Well, actually that's not quite true. Johnny himself never did or said anything to make anyone uneasy. He was actually a very nice kid. It was his countenance, his aura, if you will, that made me uneasy. He always had this look about him like he'd just learned his dog had just been run over. Keep in mind, I was still very young at this time and didn't really understand that other kids had it worse than I did. I only met Johnny's mother a few times, but I'll always remember those few times, no matter how much I try to forget. The first time I met her, we were walking Johnny home after a day on the playground. His mother opened the door and I took an instinctive step back. She was an imposing woman. Huge to a trio of young kids. Her teeth were greenish in color and jutted out over her bottom lip. Her face had broken blood vessels all over the place and her eyes were glazed. For lack of a better word, her eyes were kind of dead. She didn't bother to say a word to my brother or me. She just grabbed Johnny and pulled him inside, shutting the door hard behind her. My brother and I just looked at each other, taken aback. We walked home without really saying anything. The second time we saw her, we were on the playground itself. We weren't doing much of anything, just going down the slide and spinning around the merry-go-round. Johnny was it, So he got in the middle of the merry-go-round, held on tight, and tried not to fall off as me and my brother spun it to the best of our abilities. We were laughing and having a good time when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw his mother walking up to us. I will never forget the look in her eyes as she lumbered over. I'd seen that kind of look before, but only when my mom or dad caught me doing something they'd told me not to do. She was clearly furious. As she got closer, she started yelling. No, screaming. Screeching. I remember because as she got closer, I put my hands over my ears. I didn't hear much of what she said, but she grabbed Johnny and all but yanked him off the still spinning merry-go-round. I remember, despite the look on her face, for a split second I thought she was going hop on it and join in the fun. She dragged Johnny, who was crying at this point, back to their apartment, leaving me to comfort my brother, who was also in tears. It wasn't just that Johnny's mom had suddenly come out of nowhere and taken our friend away while we were playing, she had frightened us. The third and to this day final time I'd met Johnny's mom was the worst one. My brother and I were walking home from school, and after we got to our block in the complex, we saw a car driving slightly behind us. I hadn't wanted to startle my brother, but I'd seen that car driving behind us several blocks away. I knew it was following us. I didn't recognize it, but I'd seen enough videos about stranger danger to know to pick up the pace. As we got our apartment, the car sped up and parked close to the curb in front of our apartment. The window rolled down. It was Johnny's mom. She asked if our mother had a problem with her. I didn't say anything. She repeated herself, asking if our mother had any problem with her. I still stood there, not saying a thing. I don't know why, but I felt like if I said anything it would only make everything worse. Then Johnny's mom said that if our mother had a problem with her, she could easily become a problem for us. Then she rolled up her window and drove away. My brother started to cry a little out of fear. I put my arm around his shoulder and hurried him inside. When Mom got home, I told her what had happened. Not long afterwards, the police showed up. Honestly, everything after that is kind of a blur. I remember it was hard for me to sleep that night. I kept thinking that the second I closed my eyes, Johnny's mom would appear out of nowhere and do God knows what to me and my brother. Thankfully, after a week or so, it became clear that Johnny's mom wasn't going to follow through on her threat. After another week, it dawned on us that she wasn't living in our complex anymore. Sadly, of course, this meant that Johnny was no longer around either. Jump to just recently, all these years later. With the advent of Facebook, I was able to get back in touch with the few friends I'd made over the years. You can imagine how stunned I was when Johnny showed up in my friend recommendations. I didn't hesitate to add him. I was very happy when he accepted, and we started talking a lot. It was a good month or so before I got brave and asked him about his mother. He didn't hesitate for a second to fill in all the blanks for me. As it turned out, his mother was a paranoid schizophrenic. She had convinced herself that my brother and I were going to take Johnny away from her or something, and as a result she'd fostered a very deep hatred for us and our mother. That last day I'd seen her, she was getting close to doing something drastic, as Johnny put it. That night, when my mother called the police, they'd gone over to Johnny's house to ask her questions and found Johnny with bruises all over his face. One thing led to another and child services were involved. Johnny was taken away and his mother was put in a mental health facility. I hate to admit it, but after the things she'd done, it kind of satisfied me to know that her worst fear was realized. Life went on, as it always does. I still talk to Johnny every now and then. We've sort of grown apart recently, but he's doing well. He's happily married and he and his wife will be welcoming their first child soon. He's made it clear that he will do all the things for the child that his mother never did for him. As happy as that makes me, it's mixed with a deep sadness. Not just because of what happened to Johnny, but because of all the Johnny's moms that never get caught. Stranger in a bar. I worked in a bar that was also a guest house with some rooms in a small town. I worked on my own Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday evenings and would have very little patrons in on these nights. One night a guy came in I never met before. After a while it was just him and I and we ended up chatting. He was very well and very soft-spoken and I was surprised on hearing he had just been released from prison as he really didn't seem like the type. I didn't feel intimidated by him and all so much so that he opened up about what he did or at least his version of events. He told me that he went out drinking one night and got so drunk that he accidentally went into a neighbor's house instead of his own, which happened to be occupied by an old lady. He told me the old lady got such a fright she called the police and he was arrested for breaking and entering. I remember he kept saying the poor lady, she got such a fright she seemed remorseful. After a while it was time to close up and he finished his drink and left. For some reason when I was closing I noticed that a charity box that was left on the counter was missing. I had definitely seen it earlier. I asked the owner to check the cameras the next day and he showed me the footage. When I was dealing with a customer booking into a room, he removed the little metal chain from the charity box and slipped it in a sports bag he was carrying. That wasn't the most worrying thing, as it would have had $50 most in it in spare change. What was worrying was that when he excited he didn't leave, he went around the back of the accommodation and started trying to find an entry back into the building. What was also worrying was that when I left I always go around back to check all the doors. It's pretty dark out there and has no sensor light. On the security footage you could see him run behind a large wheeled trash receptacle when he heard me coming. As I was checking the doors I could see him look around him on the ground as if he were looking for something, maybe a rock or pipe. He didn't find anything, thank God, and I left. He stayed a little longer trying to find an entryway and then left. A few months later I was watching the news and they were reporting on a murder that happened in another city. A man met another man in a bar. They went back to a hotel room and one of the men strangled the other guy. He was caught after taking his wallet and using his card at an ATM. The murderer was the stranger I had met in the bar. I found out that he didn't accidentally stumble into that old lady's house either. He broke in and assaulted and robbed her. She was so shook from the break-in she died a week later.